Way. We are so grateful that you all made it out for our event tonight. Um, it's great to see so many faces out there. So, first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start off with a little bit of prayer because that is always part of our DNA. So, God, we are so grateful for tonight. We're grateful for this space. We're grateful for this opportunity to join together, to learn, to learn how to be better servants for you, how to better do your mission. God, we ask that you just open our hearts and our minds tonight as we discuss a topic that can be a little hard to see eye to eye on. But let us respect one another. Let us just be open to hearing new things and thinking in a new way. I said a new way. That was not even planned. But we just thank you for this opportunity, Father. And we ask that you just bless Colby tonight and let his words seep into our hearts and our minds and give us a new way of looking at things. We pray this all in your name. Thank you. Amen.
Amen.
I did. Oh, gosh. I need to practice it. So, again, welcome to what our event this evening. We are super excited about this. We're just grateful that so many people were interested in this and excited to come out. And I know some people came from further away than they normally would. So, what we want to start off with is just kind of letting you know, for some of you, you probably have never even been here, or you may not know a lot about us. But we are a faith-based community, and we started this space to give people a place to come for their voices to be heard, for them to feel safe, no matter what background they come from, whatever they're facing, wherever they're at on their spiritual journey, whatever they may be going through in their life. We offer a space for you to come, for you to be able to say, this is me. I'm broken, I'm a mess, but still be accepted for who you are, where you are, and what you have going on in your life. We have been going for probably about a year, a little bit over a year. I shouldn't say probably, sorry about that. All these people, I'm a little bit nervous up there. Normally I'm not, but this is a big deal for us. We really want to make sure that what our mission is getting out there, and that you understand that this is something that's important for us and something that we really, really want to do do the right way, so that people like who don't have a place to fit in, where they feel like they are shunned, the LGBT community, people that are going through excuse me, racial things, people that are dealing with incarceration, all different kinds of situations. We want them to know that they can come here, they can feel safe, that they can find comfort, that we can walk with them on a path of healing and finding their spiritual path. And so what I will do is I'm going to hand this over to Leslie. She's going to talk about what we have coming up as far as events and our format. And then she will introduce our guest speaker, which you are all here for. And so I'm going to pass this over.
Thank you. On your seats, or on the seats next to you or around you, is a brochure, just to kind of, that has upcoming information on there and a little bit about what we do, who we are. We meet here. We meet on Friday nights, which allows people to sleep in on Sunday if that's your thing, or to go, because we have a completely different format. So as Alton was saying, we do it a little bit differently. We focus on 4 big areas. And the goal is that you find something that you're passionate about, and then, because every Friday night is a big commitment. But we hope that you can find something that you're passionate about and you feel like you want to help out in or learn more about, and you can just come on those weeks, or we'd love to have you for all the weeks. So we have reform nights where we look at social justice issues, mass incarceration, like we said, racial discrimination, all of those things. And then we have support nights where we look at, last week we did mental health, we've done addiction, we're doing divorce coming up. So just topics that are real life topics that we like to talk about. We have Explore, that's where we spend a lot of time going through big faith questions. So this is perfectly timed on an Explore night for our faith. And then we also have Connect, where we are reaching out to the community and having people come in. We have a former Catholic nun coming to talk. It is a discussion-based format. So we have a speaker for a little bit, and then it's roundtable discussions. So the goal is that people who don't feel comfortable in church will feel more comfortable here. We're not doing songs anymore. We aren't doing communion as a whole group. There are places around that offer all of those things. So we're just trying to do something. Anyway, so that's our vibe. So in the brochure, there is a format of what weeks are coming up. All of our social media information is there, as well as website information. Celebrate. And actually on March 31st is when there's 5 weeks in the month, we have a celebrate week. And that's when we offer food and something to celebrate. So actually March 31st is the Trans Day of Visibility, is that right? And there's an event here in Naperville. So we will be attending that event and then having tacos here afterwards. So we would love for you to join us for Trans Day of Visibility event in Naperville and then here for tacos, because we love tacos here. So before I introduce Colby, I want to go through just a couple things. Housekeeping. I am terrible. I can tell you all my secrets right now. T-shirts. Someone in a Motley Crew of Misfits shirt probably has some inside information about stuff that's going on. So if you have any questions, find someone in a Motley Crew shirt. These are our second round of shirts that we've made. This kind of became our motto after a communion song that we always played called Come to the Table. And it says, we're a Motley Crew of Misfits. And that's kind of how we have fit together and we've claimed it as our own. These shirts are available for sale in the back, as well as Colby's books, which I will tell you in just a second. Cell phones. If you have the word streaming, and so if you have a cell phone, can you put it on silent? That would be awesome to be able to not have distractions while we have Colby here.
And you can check in too.
Yeah, while you have it out, go ahead and check it on Facebook. Let everybody know you're here. Restrooms. There are gendered restrooms out through the lobby, a male restroom and a female restroom. If you prefer a non-gendered restroom, they are through this door. I have signs. I made signs. They're at my house. So you just have to trust me that through that door is a bathroom that is for anyone to use. So whichever is more comfortable. It's a single stall. Also on your seat is a note card and a pen, or someone next to you has a note card and a pen. After Colby talks for a while, we're going to do a question and answer. In order to allow for anonymity and kind of consolidate some multiple questions, we are going to collect. You can write down your question, and then we will pass those to him to answer during the question and answer time. So that's what those note cards are for. Communion is over there. If you would like to do communion, it is available for you. One of us would be happy to do that with you. You can do it by yourself, or you can skip it all together. Again, we want you to be comfortable when you're here. There is also a donations box. We're not getting into all that. There's a donations box over there if you would like to donate. Okay, Colby, it's Colby's turn. Honestly, it's just crazy that we're here because Alton and I both, when we saw Colby was going to be doing a tour of his book, I started messaging him immediately. And then Alton also started messaging him immediately. And then we were like, hey, we both started. We're like, I did too. And then it all works out. And here we are, and it's March 10th. So we're so excited. Colby, hopefully you've gotten the word. That's why you're here. Is the author of many things, but the author of 2 books. Unclobber is the first book that he authored, and then The Shift is the one that we're talking about tonight, and this is the 2020 release, right? 2020? Colby has been a pastor for decades, and flew here from San Diego to be here with us tonight. So, Colby, come on up. Oh, sorry, I should have given you a warning.
Fantastic. What's going on, Napes? Is that what the locals call it? I don't think it is. I don't think it is. What you'll learn about me and San Diego culture is that I abbreviate everything. So you just have to, if at any point you're like, what did you just say? I will probably not repeat myself because I go fast. So once I get going, just hang on. BT Dubs, I'm really glad that you're here. That means, by the way, that'll probably be the only time I'll explain myself. Okay. I'm really glad that you're here. And I'm really glad that you're here. I think we've got, I think we're live streaming, right, Kat? Thank you, Kat. Everyone say thank you, Kat.
Thank you, Kat.
Oh, isn't that sweet? Kat picked me up from the airport on Wednesday. Fun fact, I got lost in the airport. Someone said it's easy, thank you. That made me feel better because I get off my plane and I just start following the signs to baggage claim, thinking I just need to go to baggage claim. Like it's a baggage claim, and I'm like, where's the Alaska baggage claim? All I see is American everywhere. And I finally asked someone, like, oh, you gotta go outside, go to the columns where there's orange, and then go into it. I'm like, there's 2 baggage claims? What is going on here? Your airport's too big, Chicago, and you have 2 of them. This is too big. So anyway, Kat, thanks for picking up. A couple other housekeeping notes other than I talk fast, I abbreviate randomly, apologies. Your airport's too big. What's the other thing I wanted to say? Leslie Alton, thank you for the invite, by the way. Thank you for both independently reaching out. I hope I was gracious to both of you. That would have been weird if I told one of you yes, the other no. But seriously, it's really, really good to be here with you tonight. Yeah, so I'm on this tour, I guess. Like Leslie said, my second book, The Shift, it came out in 2020, just 3 weeks after the coronavirus found its way to America. And so I had a multi-city tour, doesn't matter, but it got canceled. And so now we're about 3 years after when the book came out, and I thought, I think I want to try this again. I think I want to go, because I love this book. And nobody's read it. Because one person has, thank you. I'm here, I'm going to get a person tonight. Lots of people have read Unclobber, which is great, and I might get into that later, especially in the Q&A time. But this second book, The Shift, in a nutshell, this book for me is about surviving that experience when you either leave voluntarily or get kicked out of your more conservative, for some evangelical religious spaces, and you find yourself on this journey toward, you still want to keep a connection to Christianity. There's something about the heritage of this faith, this religion, that's still meaningful for you. So you want to stay tethered to that, but it has to be more open for you. It has to be more inclusive, more expansive, more progressive is a word that I use occasionally. And so this book, The Shift, is about sort of surviving this journey. Because what I've discovered both in my own life and for those that I've ministered to and pastored for the last decade, is that so many of us, we face the same kind of obstacles when we go through this journey. Theological obstacles, interpersonal obstacles, like obstacles of the soul. And so I wrote this book to try to help those individuals who are on this faith shift navigate that a little bit. So that's in the back there. But I was thinking about tonight and what I wanted to share with you, what I wanted to talk about. And like Leslie said, we will have a Q&A. So if at any point, anything I say you get really mad at, just write it down, get it out of your system, and then throw it away. Okay, it's fine. You're fine. But if any questions you have come up, please write that down so that we don't forget that later. I was thinking about what I wanted to share with you tonight. And yes, my first book that came out in 2016, Unclobber, it does address the ways in which the Bible has been used and misused to justify discrimination against those who identify as LGBTQ. And if you have questions about that, we can get into that, but that's not necessarily what I want to talk about tonight, at least not on the ground level, because something like that oftentimes takes more than what sort of this format can afford for us. And so I kind of wanted to get above that a little bit. And even content from The Shift, I've had a few talks that I've been giving on this tour, and I'm like, I don't even know If that's what I want to say tonight. So I didn't even entirely know what I wanted to share with you tonight till about 2 hours ago when I was getting on my, some of you got real nervous, like, oh no, what are we going to get tonight? I don't know. I'm as excited as you are. I was riding the elevator up to my hotel here in downtown Naples, and and this verse just sort of popped in my mind. 10 years ago, I would have been like, and God put this on my heart. 3 years ago, I would have been like, that doesn't happen. That was just a spontaneous, synchronistic event. Today, I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it was God. What is God? I don't know. But here's this thought I have. Where else did it come from? I don't know. So here's what I want to share with you tonight. It's kind of it's almost a summary of my current spiritual orientation. It's almost like after 20 years of being a pastor, the first 10 years in evangelical world, and then the most recent 10 years in sort of this post-evangelical progressive Christian space. It's kind of like this summary of, if I could boil it all down to 3 statements. I'm going to share with you tonight what those 3 statements are. Okay? Okay. To get into that, I would like to invite you to, if you want, close your eyes with me, just because I want to take a moment where we sync all of our collective minds together, or we kind of bring our hearts into a shared space. And what I'm going to invite you to do, and this is all optional, by the way, you don't have to close your eyes, you don't have to do what I'm about to say next, this is totally up to you, but what I'm going to do, and what I invite you to do if you want, is to place your hand on whatever part of your body you feel is the part that reminds you that you're alive. So for some, this could be your heart, right in your chest. Maybe you feel your heart beats. For some, maybe this could be just on your legs or your knees, because these are the things that kind of move you around throughout the day, and they remind you, like, oh yeah, I have movement, I have life. So maybe you just place your hands on your legs. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you put it on your wrist and you feel your pulse. For me, I like to place it right on my diaphragm. When I was in college and I was in choir and took vocal performance, I learned how to breathe properly through my diaphragm. And so now when I inhale, my whole belly expands. And then when I exhale, it all collapses. So place your hand wherever you feel reminded that you're alive. And with me, would you take a deep breath in and let it out. And for some of you, that might have been the first mindful breath you had all day. And I don't say that for shame or judgment. I just mean, if you're anything like me, you wake up and you just hit the go button and you don't stop. And you forget to pause. You forget to be in the moment. You forget to be here. And so sometimes it just takes another person saying, hey, breathe in real quick with me. And out. And when I do this, when I bring my attention to the breath, what I'm aware of and what I would invite you to bring your awareness to is the fact that that breath that you just took, and this next one, and the one after that, there's really nothing that you did to make that happen. All day long, you've been breathing just automatically. It's just been happening. And not to attack your ego or anything, but you didn't really do anything to deserve that breath. You just kind of, you're there. And yet you get another breath, and another breath, and another one. And I say this because for me, when I think like this, I'm reminded that every breath is a gift. Every day is a gift. Every moment is a gift. And for me, that's grace right there. That's grace. This life, this moment is a gift. And God, to the extent that we are able, we say thank you for this gift. Thank you for breath. Thank you for this moment. Thank you for this room. I pray that over the next few moments together, that there would be an openness in our heart, that there would be a tenderness in our mind, that we might yet interact with the divine tonight and maybe even leave here a little bit different than how we came. One more deep breath in and out. And the loved children of God all said, Amen. Amen. All right, so you know that chapter in 1 Corinthians 13, often called the love chapter, and you hear it at weddings, love is patient, love is kind, etc. Great chapter. Love that chapter. I oftentimes feel like with the emphasis on the love is patient, love is kind, does not envy, does not boast, etc., that there is an overlooking of the first few verses and the last few verses. And this is what came to me this afternoon as I was thinking about what is it that what do I want to share here tonight with the New Way Church? And it's really this whole chapter and some of the moments. So I'm gonna work my way through a little bit of it. And I'm gonna start with verse 9 and 10, where Paul writes, "We know in part and we prophesy in part, but when the perfect comes, or when wholeness happens, when everything comes to completion, its fullness, what is partial will be brought to an end." Now, Paul, along with most, I would say, of the first followers of the way, that first generation, they all sort of assumed and believed that Jesus was going to come back and set up the kingdom on earth. That was their expectation. Spoiler alert, that didn't happen. Didn't happen. But that was their assumption, that was their intention, or that was their belief. And so even when Paul writes letters like this, we see now in part, but then when the wholeness comes, when the age comes to its fruition, we will see in fullness. He was expecting that was going to happen in his lifetime, and it didn't happen in his lifetime. So I often wonder if Paul could look back and reflect on some of his early letters and how would he then adjust some of what he said or some of what his thinking is. And I was thinking about this afternoon about how, what do you do in life when your expectation for how things are going to go doesn't work out? What do you do those moments in life when you really expect it's going to go a certain way and it doesn't? Another way to say that is, what do you do about life? Because when does it ever go the way you expect it or assume it will go? What do you do about life? And that's what I'm really, really curious to explore with you tonight, is what do you do when life doesn't go the way that you expect it to go? What do you do when you throw yourself, for instance, into a church community, sometimes for years, and you have a certain expectation or assumption about how it's going to go, and then something happens, and you discover, what? Or what do you do when you're going along in a certain family dynamic? This could be a marriage, this could be parents and kids or kids and parents, and you think, this is how this is how I think it's going to go. And then you wake up one morning and your spouse says, I don't think I want to be married anymore. Or you wake up one morning and your kid's like, you know what, I'm leaving. What do you do what do you do when you get to your job and like, hey, we're downsizing? How do you handle these moments where life does not go the way that you would expect that it would go? How do we do this thing? And what I'm going to give you at the very end is, like I said earlier, a sort of summary of my current spiritual orientation, but I also think it's the secret to life. Is that an oversell? Yes. Am I okay with that? Yes. I think I'm going to give you what I've found is sort of the secret to living life. My guess is that if you're here tonight, my guess is that you know a little bit about these moments where life doesn't go the way you thought it would go. Right? My guess is if you're here tonight, you're in a bit of a transition of some sort. Some sort of liminal space, that in between. And what I'm learning, or what I've been learning, is that these what we think of as seasons, and they are seasons, we have these transition seasons. What I've learned is that these are really just microscopic particular elements of how all of life goes. So even though you might be in a transition now, whether it's in particular faith communities or with family dynamics or with work, even when you come out of it, whatever that looks like, it's just going to prepare you for the next one. It's just going to prepare you for the next one. This really is how life goes. So how do we then create within ourselves a kind of life where we are constantly ready and prepared for the next time when the rug is pulled out from under us? I was thinking about I call it the legend of manna. You guys remember manna is this Old Testament, I don't know, gluten-free product, the early gluten-free product? I don't really know. But when the Israelites were wandering the desert or the Hebrew people, after having been liberated from Egypt, they were stuck in the wilderness trying to get their way to the promised land. And if you remember manna was this substance that would appear on the ground that they could gather and consume and eat, and it would be enough for the day. It'd be enough for the day. They couldn't really store it. It didn't last. So they just had to one day at a time consume their manna. And if you recall the story, there were some within the camp of the Hebrews that were longing for, I don't know, pizza, burrito, tacos, right, Leslie? Like they wanted something more than just manna. And they would start to grumble. They're like, can we just go back to Egypt? At least there we got like variety in our diet. Yes, I know we were slaves. Yes, I know we just made bricks all day, but we also got to eat more regularly. And then there were those that were like looking forward to, when do we get to the promised land, this land of milk and honey we've been hearing about? And manna is almost like this sucking you into the present moment, where you don't get stuck in the nostalgia of the past and you don't get wrapped around the axle of the anxiety of the future. But manna has this way of bringing you just right here in the present. This is your life right here, right now. There is no past, there is no future. It's this right here. And I want to give you some manna because, like I said, life is always going to be moving and transforming and changing and evolving. You're always going to be moving in some direction. So how do we prepare ourselves? What is the manna that will allow us to, in whatever moment we're in, return to the present? So here is my manna for you tonight. I'm going to jump to the very end, and I'm going to back up and work our way through there. So the very end of 1 Corinthians 13. Some of you might know or remember it. Verse 13 of chapter 13. I'm going to quote it from the King James because it just sounds good. Verse 13. And now abideth. How fun is that? And now abideth. In this moment. And now abideth. Faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. And now abideth. When everything fails you, when you don't know where you're going and you long for where you've been, but you know you can't go back, and now in this moment abideth, the thing that remains, the thing that is left for you when there's nothing left for you, is faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. First, faith. Paul says this in verse 11. When I was a child, I used to speak like a child. I used to reason like a child. I used to think like a child. But now that I've become a full-grown human, I've put an end to childish things. Real quick, I like to pair that along with another part of Paul in Philippians where he says, I have not yet attained, but this I do, I forget what's behind me and I press on towards the future. There was a sense in which I think Paul held these two things in tension. He acknowledged that he has grown. I used to be a child, felt like a child, now I don't. But he also held in tension like, I haven't yet arrived. And I think this is a very good balance to hold. Remember that you have come a long ways, people. I'm guessing you don't think now what you thought 5 years ago. You definitely don't think now what you thought 10 years ago. And good gravy, if any of you still think now what you thought 20 years ago, whew. But you also aren't done. You also haven't arrived. I hope you don't think 5 years from now what you think tonight. Okay? When I was a child, I used to think like a child, talk like a child, but now I put away such childish things. Faith. Okay. I'll talk about this a little bit in the shift. This is how I open the first chapter too, is trying to cast a different way of thinking about faith. And here's the reason why. Because oftentimes in Christianity, faith is reduced to the things that I believe. The things that I believe. And so in my work, working with people who have, again, left conservative Christianity and are moving towards something more progressive, I often run into these sort of comments where people say, I think I've lost my faith. Or what happened to my faith? Or my faith just isn't what it used to be. And 10 times out of 10, what they mean is, I don't believe the things I used to believe anymore. Or I don't know what I believe anymore. Y'all, this is, by the way, I said y'all, I'm not from the South. I don't know why I dropped y'all, but I do. Y'all, faith and belief are not the same thing, and yet they are oftentimes interchanged without us even realizing it. So I submit to you that faith is not a collection of our beliefs. Our beliefs will come and go. This is how it has always been. Revert back to 90 seconds ago when I said, you don't believe the same things now that you did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and you won't believe the same things 5 years from now. This is not mean that your faith is broken, lost, or destroyed. I suggest to you that faith is more akin to a verb. It is the thing that you do. It is a posture of trust. Now you might be saying, well, what does that look like? Thank you for asking. Consider the following 4 stories, I'll be real quick, in the Gospels. And these are just 4 examples of multiple times when Jesus said to people, your faith has saved you. Your faith has saved you. Jesus said this quite a few times. One time was with the Roman centurion, where he had a sick servant. And if you remember the story, he sent someone out to go fetch Jesus to say, come and heal my servant. And as Jesus was coming close, he sent out more people, said, don't even bother coming to my home. I'm not worthy. Just I know that you can say the word and he'll be healed. And Jesus was like, wow, I haven't seen faith like this in all of Israel. And in that moment, the faith of the centurion healed. That was pretty cool. Story number 2 is there was a woman who had been bleeding for years and years, and she exhausted all of her money and all of her resources trying to get answers from science for why she was bleeding, and all she was left with was an empty bank account of disappointment. And yet one day there was Jesus walking by, and she thought, if I can just touch the hem of his cloak, then maybe I can find healing. And she wheels her way through the crowd and touches, and Jesus is like, who just touched me? And the disciples are like, there's a lot of people around here. Everyone's been touching you. And Jesus is like, no, this is different. And suddenly in that moment, the woman was healed. And Jesus turns and says, your faith has healed you. Your faith has made you whole. And then there's another woman who was from a region called Samaria, and her daughter was sick. And a Samaritan woman, different religion, different culture, forsook her own religion. Why? Probably because, I don't know, sometimes religion fails us. And she goes and she finds Jesus and she says, hey, can you help heal my daughter? And Jesus says, well, I didn't really come for the Samaritans. And the woman's like, yeah, but I'm here. And Jesus is like, okay, wow, that's good faith. Your faith has saved your daughter. Your faith has healed your daughter. And then the final story is there's this woman who Jesus is at dinner with the Pharisees. By the way, I told you I'm going quick. I'm not going to explain any more of these stories. We're just barely touching on them to make a broader point. Jesus is at the home of some Pharisees, and there's this woman that comes in. And all we know about this woman is that she's called Sinner. And this woman known as Sinner comes in and begins to wash Jesus' feet with their tears and with this oil. And the Pharisees, as you can imagine, get all bent out of shape, because how can Jesus be okay with this sinner being in his space like this? And Jesus says, to the woman, like, faith has saved you. Okay, so one of my questions that I've been asking for years is, if faith is synonymous with things that we believe, if faith is about what we hold between our ears, the intellectual ideas that we assent to, then I ask you, what faith, what belief statement did the Roman centurion say? What faith, what belief statement did the woman who was bleeding offer? What faith or belief statement did the Samaritan mother, what faith or belief statement did the woman called sinner proclaim? It's rhetorical, because the answer is none. There was no belief statement being uttered. So what is it? What is the faith that Jesus is saying saved these people? And faith is this, in my opinion. You can take it for what it's worth. The Greek word for faith is pistis. And I would suggest to you that anytime you come across pistis in the Greek, a better translation of this Greek word is not so much faith, which again conjures intellectual assent to like doctrinal ideas. A better word is trust. It is this openness, this posture of trust. And when you go back and you reread all these stories, you see that all these people found within them this capacity or this end of themselves, where the Roman centurion, I have the whole empire of Rome behind me, and I'm coming to this Jewish rabbi for help. Because sometimes, I don't know if you can relate to this, sometimes all of the power of the empire fails us. Sometimes we come to the end of ourselves and we're like, I got nothing. So I'm laying it all down. The woman who has been bleeding for years and years, I don't know if you can relate to this, but sometimes money doesn't solve everything. Some of you are like, I would like to test that theory. I'm with you. Sometimes science doesn't have all the answers. And so there's this woman who has come to the end of herself and just throws herself upon Jesus and says, I have nothing, just me. And you begin to see this posture of this openness and trust. And again, same thing with the Samaritan woman who, again, religion, she had found the end of it. She threw herself upon Jesus, and the woman known as sinner. Have you ever been labeled by your community? Have you ever been told who you are by others? In a way that you're like, I don't even know who I am anymore. All of these characters, I submit to you, the faith that saved them was this posture of openness and trust. This is what Jesus was applauding. This is what Jesus was saying. That is what has made you whole. And by the way, made you whole is another translation for sozo. Sozo is often translated as saved. I don't always know that the English word saved does us many favors in the Gospels either, because that conjures life after death. When in reality, most of the time when they were using sozo, it was about this world wholeness, completion, liberation, rescue. Now abideth this, faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. Faith. I submit to you, point number one, faith is this posture being open. Being open. We got a cat, her name is Nala, and Nala loves to wander the house in search of the sun, just so she can lay in it for hours, turn her little belly open to the sun. And sometimes she'll wake up from a nap and realize that the sun has moved, and so she wanders into the next room and gets up on this edge of the couch and falls asleep under the sun. I think faith is kind of like that, where we have this, we know out there is a light, there's goodness, there's warmth, and it is this constant posture of opening to it. Okay, hope. How about hope? Here's a quick word about hope. In verse Paul writes this in I didn't write the verse down, whatever, somewhere between 1 and 13. Paul says, now we see a reflection in a mirror, but then we'll see face to face. Now I know partially, but then I'll know completely, in the same way that I've been completely known. Okay, hope. Quick word about hope. Hope is really scary. Hope is really vulnerable. Have you ever had your world collapse and come up against that moment where you start to maybe wonder if things can get better, and then you retreat like a turtle back into your shell, like, never mind, it's too scary. I don't want to hope that things will get better, because what if it doesn't? It's vulnerable to hope. Hope is scary. So I'm thinking about us, I'm thinking about us in this room, I'm thinking about this movement that many of us are experiencing out of this more conservative religious context and towards something a little more open, inclusive, progressive. Look, by the way, if the progressive term doesn't work for you, just ditch it, okay? Let's not get hung up on it. All we're trying to name is that there might be something more to this tradition of Christianity than maybe many of us have been used to. There's this story in Genesis 32, and it's about Jacob. Do you remember Jacob? Jacob and his brother Esau. There's a number of times where Jacob kind of swindled his brother out of a few things. Like he's a bit of a trickster, a bit of a huckster, a bit of a deceiver. Fun fact, I find myself often in Jacob. I think he was an Enneagram 3. And there's this moment in Genesis 32 where Jacob, who hadn't talked to his brother Esau in a long time, because last he saw his brother Esau, he fled from the house as his brother was in a murderous rage, because once again, Jacob had swindled him out of his birthright and out of his blessing. And so, it as often happens, the older you get, you sort of get that aching, that longing to reconnect with your childhood, to reconnect with your youth, to reconnect with your family. So he wants to reconcile with his brother Esau. And I don't know when the last time is you read Genesis 32, but it's a fascinating story. So Jacob has all of his vast wealth and all of his vast resources and his multiple wives, hashtag biblical marriage, and he goes to, 3 of you got that, that's fine. And he begins to make his way towards his brother Esau's land in hope of reconciliation, and he comes up with this plan. He's a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous to see his brother again. And so he has this plan. He's like, I'm going to divide up my vast party of resources into multiple groups, and I'm going to send to them on ahead. Like, here, this group take a bunch of goats and pigs and sheep and oxen and cow, basically like the original edible arrangement. Like, send it all on ahead to Esau as a way to kind of pacify him. Like, so when Esau would get there, hey, where's Jacob? Oh, he's coming next. But in the meantime, I have this great bounty of gifts. Okay. And so Jacob's idea is, I'm going to do this 3 times. I'm going to try to pacify my brother by sending on and really try to lower the temperature of my brother, who probably might still want to kill me. I don't know. So he enacts this plan. And then the very last night, Jacob, he takes his wives and his children across the Jabbok River, and he sets them in the camp. And then he goes back across the Jabbok River, and he sets up a camp for himself. And he spends the night alone. And already I'm like, I get that. I get that. Like, being alone. Have you ever noticed how sometimes life's greatest transformative moments happen when you kind of are detached from everything you used to know? And so Jacob's in this season, this moment of life where he's about to see his brother the next day. He has no idea what to expect. And he falls asleep that night. And you remember this story? Or he tries to fall asleep. There's a late night visitor who shows up. And they get into a wrestling match. So this is the whole Jacob wrestled with God story. In case you're like, where is this going? That's where it went. And I want to tell you, I'm totally fine with the Jacob wrestling with God interpretation of this. I don't want to take that away from anybody. Also, Jacob wrestling with an angel, that's great too. I'm sure both of these interpretations have done marvelous things for people. That's fine. A number of years ago, I was reading this, and a few things stood out to me. One of them was how evenly matched Jacob and this late night wrestler was. Neither one could sort of overwhelm the other. They were evenly matched. I also noticed how there was this interesting interplay between the names. Like, tell me your name. No, you tell me your name. No, you tell me your name. And the late night visitor said, you remember the story, told Jacob that he's no longer going to be called Jacob, but he's going to be called Israel, which is interesting. And then when Jacob/Israel asks for the other person's name, all that person says is, why do you ask me my name? That's it. It doesn't actually answer. It's just this kind of like stupefied, you know my name. Why are you asking me? There's a few other details, again, I'm trying to just go through this really quickly, but here's what I suggest to you. Here's what this story means to me. I think Jacob, on the night before this huge moment, this life-changing moment with his brother, I think he is wrestling with what you might call a previous version of himself. Jacob leaves that wrestling match as Israel. That's his new name going forward. In that moment, I think he's wrestling with an old version of himself. And the reason why I take this story in this way is because I have had to wrestle old versions of myself all the time. And it makes a lot of sense, right? Because old versions of yourself, it worked really hard to get you here. If you've had these moments where you've audited some of your beliefs and you've changed your mind on some things and you've shifted how you think about this and you've moved communities here, those moments, they come with an internal cost. You are essentially saying to this old version of yourself that might have worked really hard through Bible study, through maybe even schooling, through relationships, like that old version of yourself worked really hard to get you here, and now you're just going to change your mind. That's hard. That's a battle. That's a struggle. And there's this moment between, I would say, old Jacob and new Jacob, aka Israel. There's this moment where old Jacob finally says to new Jacob / Israel, "Let me go." And there's one way to read that or hear that, which is like, "Let me go," like this angry, "let me go" wrestling match. But I prefer to hear it like this: "Let me go." Like, hey, bud, it's okay. You can move on. This is not who we are anymore. You're Israel now. You're not Jacob anymore. And if you keep reading the story, the next morning what happens is new Jacob / Israel gives up on the whole plan of trying to pacify his brother Esau, and he goes to the front of the line, and I love this part of the story. He goes to the front of the line, and he just bows 7 times to his brother as a way to be like, I have wronged you. Old Jacob was conniving and had plans and was mischievous and was trying to manipulate the situation. Israel's like, man, I did you wrong. I'm sorry. Hope for me, very scary, very vulnerable. Hope for me, if I'm going to believe that the future can be different, that the future can be better, I have to accept that there will be times where I'm invited to let these old versions of me go. And that's hard. I can look around, I can see people in this room for whom you have done that. And that's hard. Because oftentimes that means leaving behind relationships, leaving behind jobs, leaving behind community. But I wonder if you could hear a little bit of the old version of yourself just saying to you tonight, hey, let me go. It's okay. It's okay. This for me is hope. I'm also reminded of the story of Jesus falling asleep in a boat, and a storm comes, and his disciples are freaking out. And they wake up Jesus and they say, help? Can you do something about this? And Jesus does. It was nice of him. Calms the storm. And then have you ever noticed the sequence of events? Storm, freak out, wake up Jesus, calming of storm, and then Jesus says to his disciples, why are you so afraid? You would expect that to come after the wake up and before the calming of the storm, when like everything's raging. Why are you so afraid? Guys, I got this. But no, first it's, why are you so afraid? And I remember years ago being struck by that order of events. And here's what I thought, and this is the other piece of hope I'm gonna offer to you. I think sometimes the calm after the storm is actually scarier to us than the storm itself. Because sometimes sometimes the storm, we know the storm. Sure, we may not like it. I get that. I'm not saying storms are fun. But for some of us, the storms maybe can last for so long that we kind of identify with the struggle. And we know who we are, and we know the terms of the game. And it's actually the idea of healing that terrifies us. Actually, the idea of the calm on the other side of the storm. Like, well, who am I if I'm not the person who's wounded? Who am I if I'm not this victim? It's like that guy who was by the pool of Bethesda, had been crippled for years, unable to walk. The theory was that whenever the water gets stirred, whoever was next then, they could be healed. And the guy just never made it for whatever reason. And there's that story of Jesus asking him, like, do you want to be well? And sometimes I feel like God is kind of asking that of me, like, do you want to be well? No, because I really like being able to say, woe is me. I really like having this story where I'm the person that got wronged. Sometimes it's way scarier to imagine life after the storm. And so for me, hope is this process of allowing myself to let go of what brought me here. So allowing myself to let go of past versions of myself, past stories that brought me here. And it is about looking forward and without fear saying, there is actually life beyond this. There is something beautiful out there. And to get out of just whatever's happening in your life being the story and moving to a place where it's just a story. Faith, hope, and finally love. And this is how Paul opens up this chapter. If I speak in the tongues of men and angels, but I don't have love. If I know all the knowledge and all the mysteries, which I kind of like that he included both of that. If I know all the things there is to know, and even the things there isn't to know, but I don't have love. If I give away everything I have to the needy, if I even lay down my own body, but I don't have love. Paul says, and I'm just background noise. I'm not really benefiting anything. And by it, I just mean life. It really is just all about love. Now, don't freak out at me and start to be like, but it's got to be about more than that. What if it's not? What if it really is all about love? What if that really is the only thing that matters in the end? The greatest of these is faith, hope, faith. Now these three abideth, the faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. I can tell some of you are not convinced yet. That's fine. Paul also, in his letter to the Romans, in chapter 13 of his letter to the Romans, he says, look, all the commandments, they're all summed up in one word. Love. Love your neighbor. That's it. Love is what fulfills the law. And you're like, yeah, but that's Paul. Paul's kind of a tool sometimes. You're not wrong. So Jesus also was once asked, what's the greatest commandment? If you had to sum it all up, Jesus, what would you say? You guys remember the answer. Love. Love God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That's the greatest commandment. The second is 1A, 1B, love your neighbor as yourself. It really, really, really is all summed up in love. Bless you. But that's hard for us to just let that be. To just let love be enough. That's hard for us. And it was hard for the people that hung out with Jesus. Because you remember some of what happened, right? When Jesus would attempt to just boil everything down to love. Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, okay, who's my neighbor? Like, I have follow-up questions because it can't be that simple. I need to know, like, how can I swirl around the parts that I don't feel comfortable with? Like, what? It can't really be all about love. If it's all about love, then what do we do about what? No, it's just really is as simple as love. It can't be as simple as love. What if it is? I know this is not. To just boil it down to love does not a religious institution make. Now, I'm not going to go off. I'm not one of these cynical, bitter, like anti-religious institution people. I think institutions matter. When you look at, oh God, I'm going to get off on a tangent here. I'll come back real quick. Okay. when you look at movement theory and how movements operate. Movements, they are birthed out of a discomfort with, a disillusionment with, a pushing against the existing institutions and saying, this thing is foul, we need changes here, here, and there. This is what movements do. They push against existing institutions asking for change. Sometimes the institutions will acquiesce, be like, you know what, you're right. And then the movement is no longer needed because it succeeded in changing the institution. Oftentimes, what happens is the institution doubles down, and so the movement has an option. It can either go and start its own institution, or it can just sort of fiddle away because it was unsuccessful. What doesn't happen, because oftentimes we think, oh, the church, we're just a movement of people. That's great, but eventually movements need to coalesce into something that preserves the gains of the movement. Otherwise, it just fades away. I'm reminded of Occupy Wall Street years ago. Great movement, didn't have any way to sort of like actually measure what it was about and how to preserve those gains. And so it just fiddles away. So movements, when they succeed, a successful movement actually does then create ways to preserve the gains that it has made. So institutions are just a normal part of the life cycle. So I'm not anti-institution, I'm not anti-religion at all. That being said, to just accept that life is really just about love, that's what matters most. It's just really hard to settle. It's really hard to raise money with that. I mean, did you notice how Leslie was like, we have a donation thing in the back, I don't know, please give? Yeah, that was me for 8 years with my church. It's really hard to get people to give money when you're not like scaring the hell out of them. Right? When you just sort of dangle a carrot out in front of, hey, what if we built this new community? What if we created this vibrant, eclectic, diverse, open, authentic group of people that coalesced around these common shared values? Like carrots, they sometimes work, but sticks work a lot better. And I don't love that about humanity, but it's kind of true. So this is why from the very beginning when Jesus was trying to say, honestly, love sums up everything. It really is the most important. It's 1A and 1B. Right from the get-go, there was, yeah, but there's no way that can be true. There's got to be more to it. There's got to be more to it. Jesus was trying to get some folks to accept that love really is the thing that matters. And he told this story of a father who had 2 sons. And you all know this story. The younger son grabs his share of the inheritance and he goes off and squanders it. Meanwhile, the older brother stays home. He's diligent. He follows the rules. And you remember the story? The younger son got to a point where he assumed that life back at his father's house, even as a servant, would be better off than his current situation. And so he kind of gathers his willpower and picks his fragile little ego up off the ground. And Jesus says, and he comes to himself. We'll come back to that. He comes to himself. It's like, I'm going to go home and beg my father for forgiveness. And you remember the story, right? The son begins to make his way, and before he can even get to the family ranch, the father runs to him. And the son, bless his heart, again, another southern saying that I don't know why I say, but the younger son, bless his heart, begins to go into his prepared speech. Father, I'm so wrong. I'm so sorry I've wronged you. And if you recall, he can't even get into his speech because the father just throws his arms around his son's neck and kisses him and throws a robe on him, a ring on his finger, and tells everyone to go get the party ready because my son is home. And then if you remember, the party's going on and the older son is nowhere to be found, and the father goes and finds him like, "What? Hey, your brother's home. How great is that? Let's party." And the older son is super frustrated. Like, "Dad, man, I have done everything right. I've believed all the right things. I've done all the correct rituals. I've participated in all the Bible studies. I've been baptized. I've taken communion every week. I've said my prayers. I've done my quiet time. I've done it all right. You never even gave me a little goat for me and my buddies to have a party with." You recognize that attitude? That sort of entitled, like, I've done everything right. Why don't I get to have fun? And the father says to him, "Oh, my sweet, sweet child. Everything I have has always been yours." Almost as though there's this, like, how did you miss that? Friends, I read this story, and you've got this younger brother who thinks to himself, in order for me to be accepted by my father, I need to completely apologize for everything I've ever done wrong and just hope he accepts me because I don't deserve to be his son. I have squandered that opportunity. I don't deserve to be his son. And then you have this older son who has the other extreme, which is, I do deserve my father's love. And then in the middle, you have this father who's like, deserve? Deserve has nothing to do with it on either side. Deserve has nothing to do with it. You are my child. You can never lose my love, nor could you ever earn it. You just have it. Everything I have has always been yours. When Jesus gets baptized and comes up out of the water, and the people reported hearing this voice from heaven saying, "This is my beloved child, in whom I am well pleased." How is that not the word spoken over everyone for all time? This is my beloved child, in whom I am well pleased. This is my beloved child, in whom I am well pleased. This is my beloved child, in whom I am well pleased. Not because you deserve it, no offense, I'm sure you're lovely. You are the best. Tornado. But deserve has nothing to do with it. And you can't screw it up. You can't do so many wrong things. Sorry, Mom, Dad. You can't do so many wrong. You can't, I'm assuming Mom, Dad. Who knows what's happening here? Let's just sit. You can't ever screw it up. You can't ever screw it up. You can't. Now abideth these three, faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. And here's how I'm going to wrap it up. I told you that this is a little bit of a summary of how my 20 years of being a pastor, this is really what it has boiled down to for me. And this is, for better or worse, this is the thing that I felt was worth showing up tonight to say. To a room full of a motley crew of misfits. To a room full of people who are here because you still believe in something. You don't always know what that is, but you're here because you still believe in something. The thing I want to say to you, that the manna I want to offer you, for those moments when you've left Egypt and you can't go back there, but you also haven't arrived at the promised land yet, you're kind of just stuck in this in between, which is really, I would just argue, is all of life, constantly. The manna I want to give to you, the thing that you can say, how do I handle these in-between moments? How do I handle these changes, moments, these seasons of change? The thing that I want to give to you is faith, hope, and love, and it looks like this. This is the summary. I think this is pretty much all I've figured out. I used to write systematic theological papers. I used to debate doctrine with people. I used to memorize Bible verses. Here's the three things that I think I've figured out. Faith, which is just the posture of staying open. Hope, to quote Julian of Norwich, it's this idea that all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. And love, which is, I'm okay. I'm okay. I am a beloved child of God. I can't earn it. I can't lose it. I'm okay. What's the manna? What's the thing that grounds me? What's the thing that sustains me through these seasons of change when I'm shifting beliefs, when I'm losing community, when my life is undergoing all sorts of change? Faith, hope, and love. I'm okay. All shall be well. Therefore, I'm just staying open. Nothing is worth closing over. Nothing is worth closing over. In this 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians, as we started and I mentioned, the middle chunk gets a lot of the play. Love is patient, love is kind. I'd like to close by rephrasing it for us tonight. And the way I'm going to do it is this. Because in the book of 1 John, the author suggests that God is love. Which, by the way, if we need to return to, is it really all about love? Yeah, it really is all about love, because God is love. Like, what if it's not more complicated than that? I'd like to read this for you as I close, and then we'll do some questions. I'm going to invite you again to close your eyes, not because there's anything magical or mystical about it, but because it helps eliminate distraction. And I'm going to read this chapter that you all know so well, but instead of the word love, I'm just going to replace it with God. Because I don't see a lot of difference between that. So, my friends, I offer this to you. God is patient. God is kind. God is not envious, nor does God boast. God is not arrogant or rude. God doesn't even insist on God's own way, believe it or not. God's not irritable. That's a relief. God's not resentful. God doesn't rejoice at wrongdoing, but God rejoices with the truth. God puts up with all things. God believes all things. God hopes all things. God endures all things. I pray for you that wherever this life takes you, or whatever you're going through right now, whatever Egypt you've recently left, whatever promised land you have yet to touch, and when you find yourself alone, or feeling alone rather, when you find yourself scared, when you find yourself overwhelmed, I pray that you return to these three things that remain. When all else fails, abideth these three. Faith, stay open. Stay open. Nothing's worth closing over. Trust that all shall be well. Let go of past versions of yourself. Thank them for their service. Thank them for how they got you here. But now hear them saying, let go, it's okay. I know that the calm can be scarier than the storm, but all shall be well. And love. Somehow along the way, our religion has taken this idea that Jesus suggested, which is that it just really is all about love, loving God, loving ourselves, loving others. And we have lost the plot to make it about belief and believing the right things. Somehow we have convinced ourselves and convinced one another that the thing that matters most to God is ideas that exist between our ears. Somehow we have decided that the creator of the cosmos cares most about belief. No. It's love. And where that begins is knowing that you are a loved child of God, not because you deserve it, not because you earn it, not because anything else, just because you are God's beloved. That is enough. That is enough. Well, let's take one final breath in. Well, not one final breath. That guy. Surprise! Deep breath in and out. Thanks, Newick. Thank you.
So good. We'll do another round of applause just for a second. I think as the speaker and the giver of information, and it's so helpful to have someone like kind of leading the way through this. But also it's important that you, Colby, are told that you are good and okay and worthy and all of the things that you just told us. So thank you. If you have questions for Colby, go ahead and write them down, pass them to the end, and Alton is going to grab them, or you can pass them that way to Jen. While we are doing those, you don't understand how important good sound is until you don't have good sound in your place. And if you've been with us at a New Way before, you know we struggle with sound sometimes because we have, we're just making it work. And Sean is here from Signature Entertainment, is that right? Is that, yes. Sean has made this evening so much more pleasant with the quality of the sound. So thank you. You can find his website, you can find him on Facebook, and he has weddings and all sorts of events, so please find Sean. Also,
We'll tag him too, so.
yes, we will tag, because we wanna make sure that he gets a good push from us. Also, Colby is, if you like what you hear, I already get it, but you need to sign up for the Perspective Shift articles. You can get a version that's free, but better than that is the paid version, because it's not expensive when you think about the amount of information that you're getting. And you can go on Colby Martin online, right? ColbyMartin.com, online? Just Colby Martin, you'll see it. And there's all sorts of stuff on there. YouTube information, or YouTube videos and courses on LGBTQ inclusion, and just a wealth of information. So please go there as well. You can do monthly subscriptions to those, you can do a yearly subscription. So look for that as well. I was supposed to do something else. Oh, book, yeah. Oh, yeah. We're gonna give you a book. Oh, we're not all of you, sorry. There's so much excitement in your faces just now. You got to get your little people, so we don't have a lot to give, but we do have one book to give you. So we are going to do that based on who has the birthday that's closest to today. So if you think you might have a birthday that is the closest to today, let us know. Any March birthdays? Okay, Mary, Megan, and Scott, and Deb, sorry, I had a brain fart there. Okay, Mary, when's your birthday?
March 19th.
March 19th, that's really close. Should be you, Deb? Okay, March 20th. Scott, what is yours?
March 8th.
Oh, March 8th.
2 days
Okay,
ago.
there was one more, Megan.
I'm furthest.
You can still tell us your birthday.
March 29th.
29th, there we go, okay. So, Scott, oh wait, who else?
That was everybody. Oh, no, we're just playing. Okay.
Hi, Scott, yay! You get a book. And also shout out to Scott. Scott's first visit to a new way was a night that we were doing Taekwondo, or not Taekwondo, come on, Aikido. We were doing Aikido in here. We had mats out and Victoria was flipping people on their backs and stuff. And he came back. So it's fun. You should join us on Friday nights. Okay, do we have any questions or nobody? No one has a question. Oh, we do have questions. Great. Okay, I'll pass this to you.
And no questions from online.
No questions online. They're all just, okay. Okay.
Actually, is this gonna be recorded?
Yes.
Made available?
Yes,
That's fine.
yes.
Yes, it will be online. It can be on our YouTube page. And it can be on, it will be on, it will stream to Facebook Live and to that, and including the question and answers too. So we're still online.
Yeah, this will get us started, and feel free, if more come in, or even if you don't wanna write it down, I may run the risk and let you speak out loud. Oftentimes those questions become just statements. Okay. So one person asks this: how do you settle into the calm without becoming complacent? How do you settle into the calm without becoming complacent? Okay, here's my first instinct. What's so scary about being complacent? What is the thing that's maybe driving us from not wanting to be complacent? My hunch is this, that complacency, we hear that and we think things like this. There's a lot of things wrong with the world. There's a lot of people that are being hurt and harmed and marginalized and oppressed, and complacency looks like being okay with that. And so maybe that's where the question is coming from. How do we settle into the calm without being complacent? How do we let go of some of the anxiety that fuels us into this frenetic pace in life, and yet still hold on to the part of us that wants to say, that's not okay, this is wrong, I need to fight against that. Okay, a couple thoughts on that. Great question, by the way. I would first submit to you that you're not going to be any good to anyone unless and until you are okay in here. Another way to say that is, if you don't first do the work to accept that you are accepted, if you don't first do the work to come to an awareness that you are loved by God just as you are, if we don't do that work, then we're going to be constantly grasping at others for love. We're going to be constantly extracting from others a sense of belonging. If we're not okay in here, we're going to be trying to grabbing it from other people. Make me feel okay, make me feel worthy, make me feel like I'm accepted. This is just sort of how it goes when we don't have an internal sense of I'm okay. So there's a lot of, oftentimes, especially like maybe in social justice work, there are people that have really good intentions and they get out there with a bunch of excitement and enthusiasm, and I want to make a difference, and I want to change things, and I want to stand up for the little guy, and I want to be a good ally, but they haven't yet done the soul work to know that they're okay, that they are loved as they are. And so now all of this frenetic activity to try and be agents of change become just more ways that we try to fill the longing inside of us. And where that can get us in trouble, and this is what I've seen over and over again because I've lived it, I've been it, is you get out there, especially I'm speaking to allies here, you get out there and you get real enthusiastic and really jazzed up and you're like, I'm gonna make a difference, I'm gonna make a change, Michael Jackson, but I don't start with the man in the mirror, like it's just, I'm gonna go out and change the world. And you get the first resistance to that. You get someone saying, hey, slow down a bit. Or like, hey, maybe just sit and listen for a while. You get any sort of resistance or pushback, and what happens? You get like, what? Aren't you grateful that I'm out here fighting for you? Well, we get all hurt and offended by it. Like, oh, I'm trying to do my best out here, and you're getting upset about it. What that is that's my validation I'm offloading to others. My sense of okayness, I'm outsourcing. And so when that doesn't, I don't get the feedback that I want, then I get all hurt and upset and I retreat. Okay, so how do we settle into the calm without moving into complacency? I would offer to you that it starts with doing your own internal soul work. When you can be grounded in your identity as a loved child of God. I think you don't actually, it doesn't lead to complacency. I think complacency, in the sense of this question is asking, complacency is like a numbing technique. Complacency is I'm like afraid of the world out there, so I'm just going to retreat into here, but not in a good way. I think once we do the work to be okay in here, then we're like overflow. We have all this extra love and energy to spare. We're not grabbing it from people anymore. We have some to give. And I actually don't think complacency is like going to be a problem anymore. Okay, that was a really unnecessarily long answer to that question. Here's a question. What role does prayer play in your view of faith, hope, and love, and beyond? Thank you, Buzz Lightyear. What role does prayer play in this whole faith, hope, and love? Okay, look, I don't know what I think about prayer. Okay, I don't know. I can tell you what I've thought in the past, if that's helpful. Now, I was born, I'm a recovering Baptist, so I was born into a world where prayer was this way in which we tried to tune the knobs of the divine in such a way so that we could sort of get what we needed. We pray for things and hope that God would give it, or we had this idea that we could actually change God's intentions through our prayers. And then I think sometimes you hit a point in life where you see that like go awry often enough, where you're like, I don't know if that really is how this whole thing works. And then you get helpful things like prayer isn't about changing God, it's about changing us. And that's like a really helpful way to think about it is when I pray, I'm not trying to change God's mind, I'm trying to open up space in my heart. And I think that's a really helpful way. So I went through a season of that with prayer. Now for me, how does prayer fit in? I'm relearning my prayer life. I'm relearning it. And here's what I'm giving myself. I'm giving myself permission to not know what I'm doing. I'm giving myself permission to maybe even use old language sometimes. Guys, every once in a while, I will pray to God as Father. I know. I'll pray to God as Mother. Every once in a while, I will pray and ask God to do something. Even though for years I'm like, that's not how prayer works. Now I'm like, well, what if I just need to pray that today? Recently, I went through one of the hardest seasons of my life, like the deepest grief I've ever known. And I found myself at nights just being like, God, help. Now, theologically, I had all these thoughts about what that means, but in the moment, I'm just like this scared little boy that just needed help. So how does prayer fit into my view of this? I don't know, I'm still working that out, but I'm giving myself permission to not overthink it sometimes. I don't know if that's helpful. Look, part of what my work is, by the way, is to just normalize the fact that there aren't clear answers to most all of this. Part of my work is to just normalize that this journey of faith, and especially the shifting, the moving from this whatever conservative world into whatever progressive world, like this, it's hard. And it's not hard because you're doing it wrong. It's not like a way to do it where it's easy. It's just hard because it is hard. So part of my work is to just normalize it every step along the way. Like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, give yourself some compassion and grace and kindness because this is just really hard. So if you're here tonight and you're like, Colby, I still pray and ask God for things. I still pray and ask for healing. I still pray and ask for a promotion. I still pray and ask for a parking lot or a parking spot. Maybe a whole lot. Maybe you have an abundance in your prayer life. Like a whole parking lot. If you drive Leslie's van, you're gonna need it. I don't want to take that away from you at all. I'm not here to say like don't pray like that. And if you're here tonight, you're like, I haven't actually prayed in a year. I'm not here to say start praying. I guess I'm just here to say I get it. Wherever you're at, I get it. This paper says, James Finley says, quote, God is a presence that protects us from nothing, but sustains us in everything. End quote. Thoughts? Question mark? God is a presence that protects us from nothing, but sustains us in everything. Protects us from nothing. I don't like it. That's my thought. No, let me rephrase that. I'd have to know the context to know more of what Finley's talking about. But this whole idea of protecting us from nothing, look, the more I have leaned into this idea of I am okay in here, that I'm a loved child of God, that there's nothing that I can do to lose that there's nothing that I did to even earn it or deserve it, and that I am okay, that actually does protect me from a lot. And I don't know what to call that other than the presence of the divine. This is all I have is the presence of the divine, and this is it. Like this soul, this thing that observes all of my life happening, this thing that is unmoved by personality, unmoved by time, unmoved by events, this core in here. I keep pointing to my chest like I'm Iron Man or something. I don't know where the divine lives in me, but that part of me that is aware of itself, that part of me that is somehow eternal and timeless, if that's not the presence of God, I kind of don't know what is. And the more that I relax into that, the more that I settle, the more that I accept that, it kind of does protect me from all sorts of things. It protects me from thinking that I gotta hustle for my worthiness. So return to my Enneagram type 3-ness, which I know is probably a shocker to you. My natural default mode is I have to earn people's admiration and respect, and that's the only way that I get love, is by doing cool things and performing. The more that I can see that for what it is, which is not true, and lean into what is true, that I'm loved just as I am, this protects me from needing to always perform and always put on a mask and be a chameleon and do whatever it is I think you want me to do so that you will like me and respect me. That's not nothing in terms of protecting me. Like that matters to me. What was the second half of the quote? Sustains us in everything. Oh, I like that one. I'm all right with that. God is the presence that sustains us in everything. I kind of don't know if there's any other way to think of God. I mean, what did the psalmist say? There's no, like, I could go to the highest mountain and you are there. I could go to the lowest depths and you are there. Like, there's nowhere where I can go where the Spirit of God is not. What did Paul say? Like, neither height nor depth, nothing can separate us from the love of God. There is no space in which you can, listen, I'm going to throw this out at you. Do with it what you want. You have never been and never will be separated from God. There was a story created within religion that says that the gods are distant, they're separate, their default mode is angry, and the only way we can be connected to the gods is through some sort of sacrifice, through some sort of appeasing of the gods to get them to not be angry with us anymore. And over time, that developed into various sacrifices. And so there's this idea that in order to be connected with God, we have to have a sacrifice, whether it's a goat or a child or whatever it is. We have to have some sacrifice to be connected with God. And then I believe then you have Jesus, who saw his mission as exposing the errant thinking in this, that you have never been, there is no separation from God. It's almost like the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross was almost this final sacrifice, to quote Hebrews, this final sacrifice that can say, hey, can we be done with this game now? And can we put that story to rest? It served us for many millennia. Cool. Now we're ready to let go of it. You have never been, and nor can you ever be separated from God. That is not real. That is not true. So yeah, I like that part of the quote. God sustains us in everything because there's no other way. There's no place we can be that we aren't in God. Is my thought. But hey, check in with me in 5 years. I'll probably think about it. All right. Is there any other thoughts or any questions? I think we go to 8:30 and it's 8:32, so I might be good.
No, I got anybody off. We're good?
If you want to, I do have a few copies of Unclobbered. That book has been sold out for a while, so I'm waiting on more copies from my publisher. So I only have like 4 or 5, but you can have them tonight. Have them for money. I take cash or Venmo, and then I've got lots of copies of The Shift if you want. Okay.
That's what I was gonna say, so that's great.
Yay!
Perfect. So Alton is in the back, we have books back there, we have shirts back there, we have mugs available, we have all of the things that you might want tonight. And Colby will be in the back signing,
Yep,
is that right?
that's right.
Okay, signing some books. Thank you, I'm so glad we're here, I hope you loved it as much as we loved it. Like I said, find more, go find stuff online, go sign up for all of the things. We will be here, we're here every Friday night, and I wish you all could know some of the stories in this room. So much that he was saying, I was thinking about our people who are here on Friday nights and how it rings true for them. And you would not believe the incredible people that are here and how open